I've been wanting to do this video for a while now, but never really had the opportunity. So here we are, a video project I've been wanting to make for a while. As some of you may already know, I really love the band CKY. So much so, I've kind of wanted to do this video project where I could dive and research into them and talk about just all the interesting stuff I can find about them. In this video, I'm going to be covering a lot of the history of CKY and where they're at now. I haven't actually gotten the chance to see them live, so my opinion on that won't be in this video, but that'll change in the future because I am planning on seeing them in September at Blue Ridge Rock Festival. Now, in the last video, I should have also put this warning for my viewers, but I'll put in this video that I want to give a warning that in this video there will be discussions about topics such as self-harm and drug-related problems. If anyone watching this video isn't comfortable with the topics of addiction or self-harm, I'm totally okay with you clicking off the video now because it's not really the best subject or brightest subject to even discuss. But unfortunately, it will come up in the video. Also, if you or a loved one or even just some person is going through some addiction, please don't be afraid to contact the number 1-800-662-4357, which is a hotline you can call for free that will help you find treatment for substance use. I will also have it in a pinned comment below as well as the description in this video. So, please utilize that if you absolutely need to. If somebody in your life is going through something with substance issues, that is definitely a good number to start. Also, a huge elephant in the room because of just a lot of stuff that has happened over the last 2 years. I'm not making this video to cover Bam Margera. Yes, he will be brought up a lot, but I want to do a separate video on him in the future so I can really give him his spotlight he deserves, and so I can really go into detail in just a big discussion about Bam Margera. Because honestly, he's credited in my life as being one of my heroes and idols. Like, I love the guy. So I think it would only be appropriate if I give him a separate video, not in this one. And for anybody who is confused, I should have also put this in the script, but I'm going off script so I can say this. I'm only going to be talking about the band CKY, not the videos. Also, the videos will be mentioned, but I will clarify that I'm talking about the videos when I'm talking about the videos, and when I'm actually talking about the band, I will make sure you guys know I'm talking about the band. Anyways, guys, let's jump into the video. Part 1. The Origins. Back in 1992, two teenagers in high school located in Westchester, Pennsylvania, decided to form a band together called Foreign Objects. Those two teens were named Jess Margera and Darren Miller, who will pretty much be the two main characters of our story today. And if you're wondering why that last name Margera is so familiar, yes, he is in fact the older brother of skateboarding legend Bam Margera. A little fun fact to add in here, before this time as well, Bam and Jess were also in a tiny band called Soul Roach with Jackass star Ryan Dunn. Rest in peace forever, random hero. Anyways, the Foreign Objects group would release an EP called The Undiscovered Numbers and Colors in '95, but things didn't last long for them as they quickly moved on to another project called Oil. Oil also featured live bassist Andy Smith and later Ryan Bruni. They released 2 EPs, Lifelines and Oil, in '96 and '97. Then they met Chad Ginsberg, who at the time was actually working as an audio engineer. In '98, the band CKY was really first created with the lineup being just Jess, Chad, and Darren. Going back to the band Oil, their bassist Ryan Bruni would not be present on this project as Miller would take over bass duties. However, he was included as backing vocals on the tracks The Human Drive and Hi-Fi and an additional bassist on Lost in a Contraption. In 2003, Jess would say he joined CKY mostly because Miller's ability to, quote, write complicated guitar riffs that are catchy. Finally, on February 27, 1999, CKY would release their big debut record titled Camp Kill Yourself Volume 1. One major detail to point out is the name CKY is actually just Camp Kill Yourself abbreviated, so it's like a self-titled debut. The album was recorded in Pennsylvania and was engineered, mixed, and produced by Chad himself. The album never really got onto any charts or had any mainstream success, but did however produce some of the most memorable songs such as 96 White Bitter Beings and Human Drivin' Hi-Fi, just to name two. Another huge note to take away from this album is it took over $15,000 at the time to record, and around $12,000 of that debt was paid off by Jess Margera's dad, Phil Margera himself. What an absolute legend. Darren Miller would go on record later on to say he wrote the entire album by himself, and all the copies that were later distributed that credited Jess and Chad for writing the album are all lies, which is indeed a fact. Darren Miller did in fact write the entire record. On the same day they released their debut record, they also released an unofficial EP that was meant for Bam Margera's skating video, the CKY series. On the EP, it had prank phone calls, music, and even demos. This would be re-released in 2011 as just a B-side and rarities album. During the same year, they decided to hop on to that Warped Tour 99. Yeah, remember the good old days that I never got to experience? Bring back Warped Tour, please. Anyways, things didn't go as planned as they were kicked off a tour near the end because the band decided to join a protest against tour vending prices. Part 2. The Explosion. Every band has a story when they blew up, and as for CKY, that would come when they released their sophomore record, Infiltrate, Destroy, Rebuild in 2002. However, in between 99 and 02, some huge changes to the lineup happened. In 2000, before going on to play Warped Tour, they fired Ryan Bruni and replaced him with Vernon Zaborowski, which I probably butchered the name. About 4 months later, that same year, they would go on to play that Warped Tour. Then in the same year, about 2 months after that, CKY would start seeing some mainstream success as their music was featured on MTV's newest hit, Jackass, mostly because Jess's brother Bam Margera was a huge part of that show. The members of CKY would also end up on numerous occasions appearing on the show till its final airing on February 17th of that same year in 2002. For their sophomore record, they decided to go with Island Records, who is known for publishing albums by U2, Bob Marley, Curvaceous, Bon Jovi, Poppy, and even Queen. The album's big single, Flesh and Gear, was also used on the soundtrack for the 2002 Jackass movie. CKY would also spend a lot of time touring and even end up on the Guns N' Roses Chinese Democracy Tour in 2002. That album, by the way, is probably Guns N' Roses' worst. I mean, there's a lot of bad Guns N' Roses songs, but that album, just let's not even talk about it. Yikes. What makes the whole situation funny is that according to an article from that year, CKY would say they didn't even know they were touring with Guns N' Roses till just 3 days before the tour would kick off. The tour would be a bad omen for the band, as Guns N' Roses would end up canceling out of nowhere at their Philadelphia date, which was also their opening date for the tour, without explanation, and a riot would spark. Luckily, CKY got out of there alive. However, it wasn't all bad news, as CKY's sophomore record would end up being the first album to chart, which charted at a good 99 on the US Billboard 200. Miller actually wouldn't write all of this album, as the other members, Jess and Ginsberg, pitched in their ideas as well. However, Miller still did a lot for this record, as Vernon was only a live bass player and not an actual member of the band at the time. Miller would play bass for the entire album, as well as vocals and guitars. Bam Margera and Joe Franz, who was also a part of the CKY video crew, would direct music videos for all the songs on the album. The song Flesh into Gear reached number 38 on the active rock charts, and to say they were underdogs in 2002 was a huge understatement, as they would constantly be touring with some of the biggest profiles around that era, including opening for Metallica. Part 3. Can an answer really be found? Seems like everything up till this point has been great for CKY, as they were starting to find mainstream success thanks to their involvement in Jackass, as well as just being really amazing at what they do. However, if you've been following the story so far, you'll know CKY doesn't exactly have a great time sticking to one bass player. In 2004, the team started working on the next album, An Answer Can Be Found, which has some great material, but in my opinion not as good as the last two, and sadly you'll hear me use that a lot moving forward, just because their last two albums were the most elite. While the band was hyping this record up as the best rock album of 2005, which, come on, System of a Down and Gojira also released albums that year, so sorry. In my opinion, I think System of a Down won. Would release amazing albums that same year. Verne would end up being fired from his live bass duties, and Miller would be playing bass on his record once again, as well as guitar and vocals. Not much is known why Verne was fired, but a statement was issued making it seem as if he had left the band willingly, and he left due to personal issues. On June 28, 2005, the band released their third album, An Answer Can Be Found, and went on to sell over 28,000 records the first week of its release. The album was originally planned to be called The Butcher's Hand, but they ended on the title We Have Now. The track Behind the Screams was actually originally featured on one of Bam Margera's movies called Haggard in 2003, but was placed on the album due to a fan request. The record also featured the first guest appearance in form of Jenna Krause doing backing vocals on The Way You Lived, which is a pretty solid track that I enjoyed off the album. This record is also the first record to not feature any synths or keyboards, instead of sticking to guitar solos, which only makes Dressed in Decay an even more better song. Now, the moment you all have been waiting for, it was announced in June of 2005 that former bassist of the band All That Remains, Matt Diaz, would fill in the role of touring bassist. He played his first show with the group at the iconic A Whiskey A Go-Go in Hollywood, California. They would of course tour for this album with names like Clutch, Avenged Sevenfold, and even Fireball Ministry. To end things off in this segment of the video, CKY would eventually leave Island Records in April of 2006, with Miller saying it was time to leave, and even said the record label, quote, had no idea how to market a band that doesn't write songs about breaking up with their girlfriends. Now, before we continue, let's rewind a little bit to the build-up of their album An Answer Can Be Found, as Miller decided to put the band's name in jeopardy for the first time, and sadly would begin the beginning of the end for Miller. In between the years of 2002 and 2006, Miller would end up working on a music project that would be a tribute to the metal band Death, as frontman Chuck Schuldiner sadly passed in December of 2001. In December of 2002, Miller, along with names like Mike Thompson and Paul Gray from Slipknot, would also help out with this project. After the project would go on to then make a follow-up album in the Foreign Objects discography. If you guys don't remember who they are, Foreign Objects is Miller's group from 1995 before CKY formed. However, he didn't keep himself busy enough to stay out of trouble, because soon after that, he decided to call out the frontman of Megadeth, Dave Mustaine, after Dave would threaten to cancel some shows that, quote, satanic bands would be playing as well, which in my opinion is stupid, especially for a band with death in their name. Anyways, Miller didn't like these words used and responded with, quote, stop creating drama. Then after that, Miller would go on a witch hunt against people of the internet, mostly critics, who said anything negative about the album. An answer can be found. Some notable moments from that time include the time he called critics on blabbermouth.com, which who uses that anymore, quote, lonely, jealous music fans, which is weird calling them fans when they hate your album, I guess. Then a chick named Jenny published an article for Rolling Stones magazine, which Miller didn't like, so he called her juvenile and even called her a skank. She would go on to complain to the record label at the time, Island Def Jam, by claiming he gave out her phone number and everyone was sending her death threats. Not diving deep into that one, so Jenny, if you're watching this, I'm sorry if that's true. Part 4, Carver City and the end? Now you're probably wondering how cancel culture let them slide with this, and then you remember, oh yeah, this was 2006. But moving away from that, it's time to talk about the sad, long, complicated story of what exactly happened next with Miller as well as the rest of the band. In October of 2006, Miller would announce he was working on a death metal project called World of Blood, which, if you're looking for my honest opinion on that project, I haven't heard of this project until now. The band would release a couple songs on their MySpace account in 2000, and then in 2006 they would go on to perform with the death metal band Malevolent Creation, then proceeded to record with the thrash group Believer. World of Blood would release their debut in 2011 on Nuclear Blast Records. Now that you know some important side details about Miller, let's go back to CKY's story. Carver City was released on May 19, 2009, and would be another mixed reviewed album. It was said to be a concept album because of the way the album is structured as well as written. It even throws in references to a place called Hellview, which was brought up on the band's first couple albums. It would reach number 46 on the US Billboard's Top 200 and even got number 14 on the Rock Albums chart. Matt Diaz would thankfully be the band's bassist on this record, but unfortunately be Darren Miller's last album. The album was sometimes hard to write and record for the band's members as tension began to rise between them. In 2007, Miller would leave the band after a St. Louis show turned into a physical altercation between members Jess, Miller, and Chad. Not only was the band having problems settling ideas for Carver City, but also Miller began his sad spiral into alcohol after starting to deal more with depression. His depression, according to himself, would cause him not to sleep or eat. Miller would post on his MySpace account about the incident in detail, with the post reading, quote, "I didn't quit CKY. After the San Diego show, I started getting really depressed and couldn't eat or sleep. So of course I started drinking more and more moderately. In St. Louis, I walked to the back of the bus where Chad, Jess, Hannah, Matt Cole, and our sound guy Jeremy were sitting in the back with the door closed. Before I walked in, I listened to them one by one trash me for about 10 minutes, shit-talking some extremely personal, painful things that were mostly untrue and stupid. The most painless and laughable one being how I spend all day on the computer refreshing the World Under Blood page to get hits. Bottom line, extreme jealousy. It was Chad's idea to do side projects, and when his didn't pan out, he changed his mind. Well, too late. WUB started taking off and Jess started doing other projects that no one even cared about too, so when I opened the door to tell them that I heard everything they said, a fight broke out. I slapped Jess's hat off his head, and the two of them jumped me after I put my backpack to leave the bus. There must have been a third because I felt like 5 limbs. Chad is obsessed with World Under Blood. He can't handle that I have 2 things going on at once, and he doesn't. I didn't complain when he was selling his emo and R&B shirts at CKY shows. He has always wanted to beat me up for years, and he finally got his chance with Jess giving a helping hand. I left the tour to detox and am thinking of returning if I can get a return and some apologies, because let's face it, CKY going on would both be laughable and illegal. So that's what happened. All I wanted to do was finish this fucking record, but greed took over and shows started getting booked and everything was fine until I started getting a little antsy and depressed. Then to overhear your quote friends and people you pay talking shit about you, it was enough at that point after a month on that bus to stand up for myself. Maybe not go nuts, but say or do something. I never said I was leaving CKY to pursue my other band. That's so fucking stupid. Just Chad once again not being able to get World Under Blood off his mind. When fans started asking the CKY fan page for information on the incident and if CKY really did plan on moving forward without Miller, Chad would reply back, quote, "We didn't want let CKY die and we won't. We are in a bind right now and we will sort through it with diligence and balls. We are not quitters. Miller would continue to try and explain himself on the CKY forum, but unfortunately the band wouldn't let him and kept removing his posts. However, if you know anything about the internet, someone is bound to see it and screenshot it and share it. This is Miller's post. Quote, I guess I proved my point on Ask CKY, cause they keep erasing it. They won't let me answer any questions on the Alliance site now without erasing them. But it doesn't matter because it was up long enough for fans to copy and paste my story for everyone to find out the truth. They don't want you to know the truth because the truth is horrible. That's why the Chad broken foot thing has been the excuse. Obviously we know that that was a lie, no? The only story they want you to see is their CKY pride and how they'll be able to move forward without me. If that's to be true, then A, they better write 15 songs quick because they're not using mine for the new record. B, they better change their name to something else because everyone in the world knows who came up with the name. And C, I'm sure they'll have to find a way to sell this quote product. I hope it doesn't come to that. Now back to the Chad having a broken foot. There was a rumor going around that Darren broke his foot during the altercation, but I didn't really see much of that information. CKY was sadly no more after this. But then in October of 2008, after almost a full year of inactivity from the band, Miller announced CKY would in fact be getting back together and finishing up Carver City and releasing it in 2009. Miller would talk about how he was not only doing work for the band, but also himself, as he was also working on sobriety and patching things up at the band. Even though it seemed Miller was a little sorry and cleaned up his act, the band would work a lot on this album by themselves in isolation in their own homes, which meant that tracks were only shared through email. As for Jess Margera, it seemed that he also had doubts of continuing on CKY, as in November of 2006, Margera had joined a band called Viking Skull after the former drummer Gordon Morrison, parted ways. Jess would reveal that he felt a little responsible for not only Morrison's departure, but as well as the guitarist Darren Smith's departure, because Jess would drink very heavily on the tour with them. This new lineup, however, featuring Jess would lead to the release of 2007's Chapter 2 album. The record was mixed by Chad of CKY, and to make things even more crazy is Bam Margera and Joe Franz would decide to direct a music video for their song, Hair of the Dog. Back to CKY now, not much I could find on CKY up until 2011 when the band was faced with a difficult question to continue the band or to break up now. At this time, everyone in the band had side projects and wanted to go solo, all of them except for Chad, who believed in doing one more album and staying with CKY. Miller would claim Chad had left the group with no communication whatsoever, but Jess would step in saying he needed help by responding to the comment Chad had left saying, quote, support, not insults, which is in reference to Miller's sad alcohol problem. Part 5. Where are they now? Every good documentary has to have an ending that explains where everyone's at now, and that's exactly what I'm about to do. So CKY decided to go ahead and replace Miller in 2012 for a series of shows in Australia. He ended up being replaced by former year-long Disaster frontman Daniel Davis. In 2014, Miller tried to get something going as he actually met back up with Chad Ginsberg, but sadly by 2015, with no new updates, CKY moved on without Miller once again, and once again, they were joined by Daniel. In 2017, hell got frozen over and we got a new CKY album after an 8-year gap. The album was called The Phoenix because just like the Phoenix, CKY would once again rise again and prove they can still put on a solid rock album. And no, Miller was not on vocal, he was still departed. That spot was given to none other than Chad Ginsberg himself, who not only did lead vocals, but he also did lead guitar. He's pretty much damn close to capturing Miller's vocal performance, but it just isn't the same power to it. Not only that, but we can all agree that the fact is, this is CKY's softest album, and doesn't have as much replayability to me anyways. I'm pretty sure there's people that'll disagree. Matt Diaz would be on bass once again, but left in 2019. As for the deal with Daniel, He would step in to help record in the very beginning, but had to leave early due to commitment issues. So Chad not only got to play guitar, but he also took over lead vocals. This record also happens to be CKY's shortest record to date. As for Miller, what's he up to? In 2013, he released his first solo acoustic project under his own name, Darren Miller. The album was called Acoustified and featured acoustic covers of not only CKY's music, but also Foreign Objects and Oil's music as well. He also put out another Foreign Objects album, 2 more World Under Blood albums, and another band called 96 Bitter Beings. Of course, for all the fans of CKY, the name 96 Bitter Beings comes from CKY's most iconic songs, 96 Quite Bitter Beings. As for Miller's new group, 96 Bitter Beings, it's really good. It is actually sounding a lot more like CKY than the Phoenix was, actually. I'm not gonna lie. Actually doing well, and at the time of me writing this script, they're also about to announce a tour, so be sure to check them out. As for Jess and Chad, they're still together in CKY. They plan on doing another record and even have been teasing it a bit for a release this year in 2023. In 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic, when we were all on lockdown, let's forget about that, the band played live stream showing they are still active. They also put out a special vinyl for the live stream. And that, my friends, is where I'm going to wrap up our story today. I hope you all enjoyed this passion project of mine. I've been dying to work on this for a minute. It took a lot of more time than I actually thought it would be, but you know, it's a passion project. It was a lot of fun researching about a band I truly care for. And as of finishing the script, I think we need to talk about the recent updates of Bam Margera, Jess Margera, and his family. Now, some very sad news has come out involving Bam basically beating up his own brother and threatening to kill his parents, Phil and April Margera. I wasn't going to include this in the video because really it's just not appropriate, and I really don't feel like talking about it because it is a tough subject to talk about. But I feel like I need to say something because, well, we already mentioned Bam enough, and I also want to say I love Bam Margera, and as stated in the beginning, he's my hero and idol. Beating up a family member as well as threatening your own parents with death is never okay. Bam, I know you're not watching this, but I just want to say I love you, man, but you seriously need some help, and I really hope you do get the help you need. I can't begin to tell you how much Bam has really improved my life and just made me want to live life a little more. It's so heartbreaking to see a once amazing man I could look up to throw all that away for drugs and alcohol. I won't go any deeper than this, but here's my final closing thoughts. Bam and CKY and even Jackass are a huge part of my life. I can't imagine really going on without them in the future. Bam introduced me to him, CKY, 69 Eyes, Guar, basically my entire playlist. He basically got me into my fashion taste. He got me wanting to learn skateboard and just do dumb stuff in front of the camera. As someone who can't really truly hate Bam, I'm kind of hurting inside watching him fall apart. So please be respectful in the comments below about the whole situation. If that's what you choose to comment on, I really hope you guys choose to comment on the actual video and not about what I'm including at the very end. But if you guys do choose to do that, make sure that any of the negative comments attacking me, Bam, or others, as well as Jess and his family, just be respectful about it, because if you're not, you're just a lousy piece of shit to begin with, and they will 100% be taken down out of full respect for Bam and his family. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed this video, again, it would be very welcomed if you guys hit that like button, show me some love, make sure to subscribe for more content coming your way, and as always, I hope you all have an amazing day. Stay safe, stay healthy, peace out.